Peace, peace, my good folk. Yeah, sometimes I gotta switch it up, you know what I mean? Because every day we're not quite 100% peaceful, even though we should be, you know what I mean? It's probably something good to be saying to folk, you know what I mean? Peaceful people. But I know people don't always identify with that, you know what I mean? Even me, sometimes I'm not a peaceful person, you know what I'm saying? I try to be, like I said, you know what I mean? Peace is in there, and I know how to access it. But sometimes, you know, something else is up front, you know what I'm talking about? But you know, peace, y'all. What's good? It's your brother Mansai. Today we are at Hexagram 17. All right, and rather than jabba jabba for 1,000 years, we just gonna jump right in. All right, here we go. Hexagram 17, following are, following the trigram Tui, the joyous, whose attribute is gladness, is above. Shechem. I'm going to say Shechem and text. That's what I'm going to say. Not 1,000 words. Check it with checks. Check it out. All right. Text. No. Shechem. Many of you new students may have heard people speaking about Tui. Tui is the joyful part of your being, part of the pleasure principle within you. That's what it means here. We say the joyous or the pleasure principle is above. Text. Chin, the arousing. Shechem, meaning the motivational force within you. Text, which has the attribute of movement. Right? The text that he's dealing with right here, I believe, is the Wilhelm and Baines, the book on I Ching. It's the, what is it called? It's the Book of Changes, I Ching Book of Changes. Right? He goes back and forth. This whole series of lectures is basically a correction of both of those books, right? He's correcting the mishaps that you find in Chu and Sherelle and the mishaps that you find in Wilhelm, you know what I'm saying? It's suggested that you use them both because they're both very excellent sources of I Ching material amongst what's out there, you know what I mean? So this is a correction of that. And then, you know, even more so, you know, I would say is preferable is his own book, which is called the I Ching Praxis. So, you know, and even the praxis doesn't always give the exact, you know, might not always fit your situation, but it's good to have, you know what I mean? I would say those 3 books are what you need to cover I Ching, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, so here we go. And we are at text. Okay, go back to text, right? Chin, the arousing. Shechem, meaning the motivational force within you. Text, which has the attribute of movement, is below. Joy in movement is below. Right, what we're saying is, right, whether or not I said it right or wrong, I think I talked in between it. Tui, the joyous, is above, whose attribute is gladness, right, is above Chen, the arousing, whose attribute is the motivational force. Okay, now we're on correct track. All right. So the text, which has the attribute of movement, is below. Joy in movement induces following. The joyous is the youngest daughter, while the arousing is the eldest son. The older man defers to a young girl and shows her consideration. By this he moves her to follow him. Check him. The younger girl following an older man is only a metaphor. It is only an example. It is not the focal point of the hexagram itself. The real principle here is that of an experienced person leading another person. Whether it be, you know, see, this is the type of insight that you're not going to get just by reading the text, either text, right? This is, you know, insight that's going to come from, you know, this is he's a sagely individual. He's meditated on this stuff. And not only that, but he's watched how these circumstances play out in people's lives. You know, so he's giving you this is an excellent text right here. This is, you know, that's why I'm going through it. Like, this is 64 hexagrams. This is a transcripted series of lectures. You know what I'm saying? Where, you know, the words are that small. So all of this is him talking about these hexagrams for, I don't know how many months they took to do this. So, you know, but it's very important work. dealing with the king. So, all right. Y'all got all this information in earlier episodes anyway, so here we go. And, all right, so we're talking about the younger girl following the older guy. Not really that. It's all about experience, right? Okay, whether it be a more experienced man leading a less experienced man or woman or vice versa. Implied in the elder leading the younger is in the African sense. In the ancient Oriental sense, where we could almost assume always that there was an age, where there was age, there was wisdom. One cannot extract from this reading that it would be applied to all examples in the Western life. in the Western world, where most older people have not cultivated wisdom. So you have to be very careful how you apply this reading, right? Let's just acknowledge, right? Because I'm not always talking to the, church choir here. It's a thing that in the Western world, we haven't cultivated wisdom. We don't cultivate wisdom. We don't have texts like the I Ching that we follow and get passed down by grandpops and things like that, where we study wisdom. We don't do that. Individuals study wisdom on their own, teach on their own, that type of thing. But society doesn't cultivate wisdom within the people. It really cultivates stupidity. Just listen to the radio. That's cultivation. Every day, 20 times a day, you get some whack tune telling you about something whack. You know what I'm saying? And, that's what we cultivate here in the Western world. So, nobody should get offended by hearing somebody say it. You know what I'm saying? You know it. Okay? So, just so we all on the same page. This is given from the African-centered perspective, a very experienced situation, position this person is in regarding these teachings, or just regarding wisdom itself. So, this is something to be respected. All right. I'm gonna try to kill the commercials, right? Keep it going. Okay. Okay. All right, so let me run it back. One cannot extract from this reading that it would be applied to all examples in the Western world, where most older people have not cultivated wisdom. So you have to be very careful how you apply this reading. Its basic meaning here is that there are two parties involved. One party has more experience or wisdom than the other, so therefore the younger, the less experienced, should follow in gladness. Text. The judgment. Following has supreme success. Perseverance furthers. No blame. Shechem. When you get this hexagram, success will come to you by following someone who is more experienced than you. Text. In order to obtain a following, one must first know how to adapt oneself. A man would rule, he must first learn to serve. For only in this way does he secure from those below him the joyous ascent that is necessary if they are to follow him. Shekel. Meaning, if a man has not learned to follow someone, he will not get others to follow him, because he will not have learned the basic lessons in life, and he will not be able to handle that situation. Text. If he has to attain a following by force or cunning or by conspiracy or by creating factions, he invariably arouses resistance, which obstructs willing adherence. But even joyous movement can lead to evil consequences. Check them. Here the oracles is saying, if you want a following, you must first pay your dues, learn your craft, and you learn that by following someone else. But if you have not learned your have not earned your dues and tried to get someone to follow you by cunning or deceit or force or whatever, you will encounter resistance. So here, a new paragraph should have been started. That even where one has paid one's dues and learned to follow, and now has a following, even though when you have a correct relationship between leader and follower, it says, text, but even joyous movement can lead to evil consequences. Hence, the added stipulation, perseverance furthers. That is consistency in doing right. Shekel. So besides there being a joyful following, a gladness in following, one must also learn about what is right and persevere in what is right. Text. Just as we should not ask others to follow us unless this condition is fulfilled, so it is only under this condition that we can in turn follow others without coming to harm. Check them. The leader and followers must do what is right, must persevere in what is right. Text. The thought of obtaining a following through adaptation to the demands of the time is a great and significant idea. This is why the appended judgment is so favorable. Check them. When we deal with situations of who should follow who, the leader must be one who is conscious of the superficial changes and be able to adapt his teachings to the changes of the time. For example, it would be folly for us to be trying to replicate the dynastic Kemet here in the Sarasa society living in the United States 20th century. So we must adapt the external unchangeable truths. We must adapt the expression of it. This statement is more troublesome than it appears because many people think that adapting to the changes, the changing times, means giving up the actual truth itself, not understanding that we must distinguish between truth and how to apply that truth. This is important, right? There's a lot of things that they did back then that they don't do now, and that, you can't really just one-to-one copy everything we did in ancient Egypt and say, yeah, because we Kemites, and this is how we live it. We know now we're part American and we live in America. You know what I mean? So it's, and other places as well, right? It's a modern time. Times change. Things change. People's attitudes change. What's accepted is, changes. And it has to be respected on some level. Yeah. But, he was talking about, maintaining the core of what it is, right? The image. Thunder in the middle of the lake. The image of following. Shekel. That is a simple metonymy, right? Metonymy. METONYMY. Right? Never seen that word. This is simple, the metonymy, to help you remember this hexagram. All right. I'm going to have to go look that up at some point because it's boggling my brain. Thus, the superior man at nightfall goes indoors for rest and recuperation. Shekel, meaning that in following, one must adapt himself to the laws of cycles. Text. In the autumn, electricity withdraws into the earth again and rests. Here it is the thunder in the middle of the lake that serves as the image. Thunder in its winter rest, not thunder in motion. The idea of following in the sense of an adaptation to the demands of the time grows out of this image. Thunder in the middle of the lake indicates times of darkness and rest. Similarly, the superior man, after being tirelessly active all day, allows himself rest and recuperation at night. No situation can become favorable until one is able to adapt to it and does not wear himself out with mistaken resistance. Check them. The whole paragraph is about thunder in the middle of the lake and resting in autumn and the winter, and nothing else but an example of adapting to seasonal variations. But the key is adaptation to whatever the situation demands. Because when you follow a sage, for example, we will say to you at one time to do this, or at one time to this, I think it's to do this, and another time he might say to you to do that. And it might seem to be a contradiction. But what the oracle is saying to you is that a true leader or sage will change what he tells you to do when the fundamental factors underlying the manifestation changes. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I have encountered situations where people have come to me and said, why did you 6 months ago or last year say that this is what you must do, and in this situation, and now we are in the same situation, and you are telling me to do just the opposite, not realizing that outwardly you can have the same situation, but inwardly the dynamics change. So the oracles is saying here to recognize that the sage is one who knows the underlying factors at work in the situation, and although the external situation might be the same, internally it is not the same. This is a big problem with people not being able to understand why this now and why next the opposite when the situation does not seem to have changed. The situation may change internally and externally maintain the same, or it may change externally and internally maintain the same. So things might change externally, and still I say for you to still do the same thing. And you might say, when the enemy was about to rout us, we sat and waited. Now that they are fleeing, you say to wait. What you have to understand is that this example is for you to learn to see the underlying dynamics of dynamic factors that control the moment. Okay, y'all get that. There's no explanation needed there, right? 9 in the beginning. The standard is changing. Perseverance brings good fortune. To go out the door in company produces deeds. Shekel. This particular line has been rendered in a very dangerous way, but we will explore it very carefully. Text. There are exceptional conditions in which the relation between leader and follower changes. It is implicit in the idea of following an adaptation that if one wants to lead others, one must remain accessible and responsive to the views of those under him. At the same time, however, he must have firm principles so that it does not vacillate where there is a question of current opinion. Once we are ready to listen to the opinions of others, we must not associate exclusively with people who share our views or with members of our own party. Instead, we must go out and mingle freely with all sorts of people, friends or foes. That is the only way to achieve something. Shekel. Here the author mentions, but does not emphasize, and it is very easy for you to lose the trend, the point. He is presenting two factors. One is opinion, and the other is fundamental principles. Where it is a question of opinions, the sage should listen to the followers. But the followers and the sage must be clear as to what is opinion and what is the fundamental principle. Because the moment the sage tells the follower, let me hear your opinion, the follower may not know where to draw the line between opinion and fundamental principle, and then propose changes that might strike at the heart of the fundamental principles. I think he was saying then, in terms of the sage must listen and then, do that, right? Rather than the other way. Okay. This is a line that I would have added. It is extremely important to go see the great man, because left up to you alone, you may not distinguish those fine lines between opinion and fundamental principles. This line is not necessarily exceptional conditions. Oftentimes in life, there is almost always, in every situation, some amount of opinion or personal preference or personal inclination that is allowable in the situation, which must be balanced with fundamental principles. As long as those opinions and preferences do not encroach upon and come in contact with the fundamental principles, meaning, for example, that you may be allowed to do what you like up to a point that it does not begin to violate your spirituality in a given situation. how much you should allow your likes to play is something that you might need your leader to define for you. So to say that exceptional conditions or that the standard is changing is misleading, meaning it is always allowable. For example, if you are going to have a meeting, I might say raise your hand, those of you who are in favor of meeting at 3 p.m., at 4 p.m., etc. That is a question that is up to your personal inclinations. I just gave you that as a light example. Likes and dislikes up to a certain point. Fundamental principles always there. Right. This line is not really about exceptional conditions, but the balance between opinions and fundamental principles that must be maintained at all times between leaders and followers. Y'all get it. 6 in the second place. Text. If one clings to the little boy, one loses the strong man. In friendships and close relationships, an individual must make a careful choice. He surrounds himself either with good or with the bad company, Shekel. Some of you come here and you keep good company with some of us and go there and keep company with the bad out there, thinking that it is all right, or whatever Sebekian rap you gave yourself, or shall we say that Sebek gave you, to hang on to later, right? Sebek affects thoughts, right? Sebek is the opener of your way, what you were believing or thinking about a situation. Sebek gives that to you. For those that don't know. Text. He cannot have both at once. If he throws himself away on unworthy friends, he loses connection with the people of intellectual power who could further him in the good, parentheses, or in spiritual powers or whatever. Shekel. Here the oracles takes a stand that when you come to the good, when you come to spiritual life, to something elevated in your life, you cannot maintain yourself in both worlds at the same time. Many of you think that you can do that. In the Bible, it is stated one cannot serve God and Mammon at the same time. Many of you have done fantastic mental gymnastics, at least to you, because it is not fantastic to me, in parentheses. Little tumbling routines that you think are great gymnastic feats, which allow you to persevere in trying to indulge in both worlds. But it does not work. It is like a young man mistreats his wife and says, "Why do you do that?" He said, I do a lot of good to her too. as if he is keeping an accounting book where debits offset credits. Ain't no such thing. You have to be good to one another, period. All right. So you have to give up the little boy, the inferior company, in order to win the superior company. I was in a relationship one time when, this lady, she liked what I was bringing, but at the same time, she wanted to play in, something else that she had. And she wanted me to accept that. Like, she really thought that I was going to stay there for that. Like, what? Are you serious? This is that example exactly. Anyway, so you have to give up the little boy, the inferior company, in order to win the superior company. Some people will say, maybe I can elevate the other, and that's why I keep company with them. But you see, you wanted to learn something spiritual, so I created, with the help of your ancestors and my ancestors, a place where you could come with the right environment and the right order to help each other. I did not go and meet you at the bars and at the pot pits, etc. No, we came and met here. So you have to watch those Sebekian thoughts. Well, I hang out in bars so that I can pass my wisdom to those who need it over there. Right? Yeah, we do that sometimes, right? But of course, it is said that one does not throw one's pearls at swines. They turn and rend you. They turned and rend you. I'm not sure if that's a typo. There's a difference. Yeah, I mean, and that's true. You know what I'm saying? That individual was swine. I mean, and I was literally throwing my pearls at swine. And you don't do that. Why? Because if the person is swine mind, they're going to regret you for even coming, you know, to try and help them. You know, if they're swine, don't try and do that. Don't try and correct them. You know what I mean? They have to want it, and they have to really come like that's what they want. You know, otherwise you leave that alone. It's going to hurt you. You know, I think I wrote somewhere on Facebook or something like that I get it now. I understand this thing about don't throw your pearls at swine, because, you know, swine will be like, oh, who he think he is. You know what I'm saying? Because you told them something about their health or something, you know what I mean, about their spirituality, or you gave them a reading, or, you know, you did something that was elevated that they wasn't used to, couldn't comprehend, didn't understand. And rather than them having any level of humility inside, right? See, because on the surface, that's not what was being presented. On the surface, it was, oh, okay, yeah, But you figure out later that, oh, yeah, nah, it wasn't never that. It was resentment. You know what I'm saying? See, yeah, don't throw your pearls at swine, folks. You know, that's going to hurt eventually. And then, you know what I mean, it ain't hurt that much because, I mean, I got oracles. I really knew what I was getting into. Trust me. You know what I mean? That's why I was able to step right away. Detachment. Hello. Anyway, there's a difference. We have a spiritual place. You want it, you come here for it. You don't go to the place of damnation to give spirituality, because those who went there didn't go there to find it. How about that? The thing about this situation is she acted like she was me. That was the thing. It's like, you know, she kind of fooled me because it was, oh, yeah, I'm into this and that. And she wasn't. She wasn't at all. She just wanted me. You know what I mean? You know, who could blame her? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, keep it moving. Anyway, and any one of you who make tests, go somewhere and try to talk spiritual, and you will see how soon they boot you out. They didn't go to no bars, no party, or no disco to hear the word. That's word, man, because, you know, I be tripping that nobody don't want to listen to my music. Well, I guess nobody ain't into that. You know, I ain't tripping. It is what it is. Anyway, 6 in the third place, the text. One clings to the strong man. One loses the little boy. Through following, one finds what one seeks. It furthers one to remain persevering. Little typos. When the right connection with distinguished people has been found, certain loss naturally ensues. Shuffle. Oh, how you hate that part of life. You come to the spiritual world, and then you find that you no longer can do this, and you no longer can do that, and you no longer can do the other, and there is a loss that has ensued. Text. A man must part company with the inferior and superficial, but in his heart he will feel satisfied, because he will find what he seeks and needs for the development of his personality. The important thing is to remain firm. He must know what he wants and not be led astray by momentary inclinations. Check. The second line focuses on the idea that you cannot serve God and man at the same time. The third line focuses on your attitude towards what you think you are losing. That line that says a momentary loss ensues shouldn't say that, because there is no loss taking place. It is just simply your feeling that you have lost something. It is not a real loss. You have really gained, right? What is it? In giving up the evil, right? It's not a sacrifice. That's offset, right? Go back to the principles of offset, right? In giving up the lower, have you really sacrificed anything? No. You just gave up the lower, and it elevated you in giving up the lower. So, you know, if you are lockstep with your lower spirit, if your consciousness is down in your sahu, then, now you have to give up your smoking or give up your drinking for good health or whatever the case. Oh man, because, I want to, and that's your addictions talking. Well, if you go ahead and give it up, the addictions don't have a voice in you no more. That's a silenced voice. You didn't give up anything. You gave up the lower for the higher, which is not a sacrifice. Right? Where we at? Okay, back to the text. 9 in the 4th place. Following creates success. Perseverance brings misfortune. To go one's way with sincerity brings clarity. How could there be blame in this? It often happens when a man exerts a certain amount of influence that he obtains a following by condensation towards inferiors. Shekel. The word condescension, not condensation, the word condescension here is not used in the Western popular sense. If you go to a good dictionary, you find that to condescend doesn't mean to look down through your nose at people, right? Something like that, right? Condescension here is used in the sense that a man adapts himself to the people he is trying to teach, in the sense that he adapts his language, his philosophy, his concepts. He adapts the way he carries himself to make himself approachable, because this is someone of popular movement. This is someone of something popular movement here. Like, yeah, okay. He'll keep going. There's a typo there. Okay. And if the leader is too awesome and too reverent, you cannot approach him. You cannot benefit from him. Everything is stiff, sterile, and very unapproachable. So the condescending here is in terms of a leader. Now, no matter how exalted and awesome he must make himself. Yeah, a lot of little typos. I'm like editing as we speak. Exalted and awesome, he must make himself or herself approachable by adapting and acting and speaking very much like the people he's working with. He must be one of the people so that they can feel comfortable with him. You know what I'm talking about? Back to the text. But the people who attach themselves to him are not honest in their intentions. They seek personal advantage and try to make themselves indispensable through flattery and subservience. Shekel. That line speaks about people who attach themselves to the leader and for what purposes. It is very clear. Back to the text. If one comes accustomed to such satellites and cannot do without them, it brings misfortune. Only when a man is completely free of his ego and intent by conviction upon what is right and essential does he acquire the clarity that enables him to see through such people and become free of blame. Shekel. Here is a very important lesson. Text. Not in the 5th place. So he don't explain it much. He just, y'all got that pretty much. 9 in the 5th place. Text. Sincere in the good fortune. Every man must have something he follows, something that serves him as a lodestar. He who follows with conviction and beauty and the good. He who follows with conviction the beautiful and the good. It's Mercury retrograde, y'all. My excuse. And the good, right, may feel himself strengthened by this saying, right? Shekel. Again, a lodestar in this concept, as we saw it earlier in the image where it spoke about cycles and adapting to the cycles. The lodestar is just not any leading idea that you hold on to. This is speaking about the person who sets a goal for himself, such as becoming a boxer. That is my lodestar. So I will one-pointedly pursue that idea and not sway from that idea and attain that idea. That is a lodestar, but it is not the lodestar that the oracle is speaking about. The lodestar is a spiritual philosophy of life. A lodestar here is your tutelary deity. It is the knowledge of your incarnation objective, meaning that every one of you in this room should know your incarnation objective, should know exactly how your incarnation objective is manifesting in your life every day. Your life is really like a story. Remember those reading comprehension exercises that you had in school? You read a couple of pages and it is said, what is essential, what is the, slow it down, bro, okay. You read a couple pages and it is said, what is the essential theme of this piece? Find the title for it, etc. Meaning, what idea summarizes all the statements in this work? This is what your life is. Your life is not a random sequence or a random series of disconnected events. Everyone's life is a coherent unit, like a well-written, tight novel or play. And you must find the central theme in your life. What is your what is your incarnation objective? That's what, boy, oh boy, oh boy. That's what your incarnation objective is. That is what your tutelary deity is. And that is what your name should reflect in meaning and mantric power. And then every day of your life must be a reflection of that goal. Otherwise, you are drifting like a rudderless boat. And of course, that lodestar is given to you by a leader. That's what is meant here. The text, 6 at the top. He meets with firm allegiance and still further bound. The king introduces him to the western mountain. This refers to a man, an exalted sage who has already put the turmoil of the world behind him. But a follower appears who understands him and is not to be put off. So the sage comes back into the world and aids the other in his work. Thus, there develops an eternal tie between the two. So far, what the oracle is giving is insight as to who is the sage. A true sage is one who has solved the puzzle as to what earthly existence is all about. A sage is not a man who has read a lot of books and gained a lot of knowledge. That is a scholar. A sage is one who has gone within himself and discovered all the gods, the deities, and ancestors, and learned how to converse with the spirits and pierce the veil of all illusions, and becomes one with God, and has no personal need for experience in the world, because no earthly experience can teach the sage anything more, because he has mastered all the secrets of this earth. But having attained that lofty goal of life, he comes back to help those who are still in incarnation. And he takes a great vow of not abandoning this earth until all human beings have accomplished this goal. Even though he has accomplished that, when the world yet has 10 or hundreds of thousands more years, even though he has accomplished that, when the world has 10 or hundreds of thousands more years to go before they accomplish that lofty goal itself. Okay, so that's like a run-on sentence no, it's not a run-on sentence, it's a fragment. Okay, let me shut up. Many of you don't have any patience for stragglers. You say, I don't have patience for these slow folks over here. I have to make some money. Got to get it together. I ain't got no time for these people who are slow, etc. Well, if you ever find a sage, you ought to know that he completed this work that you are struggling with long ago. And he is here not learning nothing new anymore, because it is all the same. He has seen the oneness in all mysteries. Back to the text. The allegory is chosen from the annals of the Chou dynasty, or the Chu dynasty. The rulers of this dynasty honored men who had served them well by awarding them a place in the royal family's temple of ancestors in the western mountain. In this way, they were regarded as sharing in the destiny of the ruling family. To show, that is just saying that in ancient China, the sages were part of the royal family, and the followers, who were upstanding men seeking good, were introduced to the royal family. But there is a little statement here about the Western Mountain, and in another hexagram where the West is shown to be a place of darkness and evil. But here, the Western Mountain is supposed to be where the ancestors are found. If you study the back of the I Ching, Book 3 of the commentaries, talking about the Book of Changes, Wilhelm in them, you will find that there are two sets of metaphors, of symbolisms in the I Ching. Tui, the lake, the wood of Tui, the airy element, is not the same as wood that you find in Sun. Okay, let me run that back. Tui, the lake, the wood of Tui, the airy element, is not the same as the wood you find in Sun. That's what had confused me. So, okay. The wood in Sun belongs to one set of symbolisms, and the wood of air, the 5 elements, is another set of symbolisms. The West is a symbol of the place where evil takes place, belongs to one set of symbolisms, and the West where the ancestors dwell belongs to another set. Got it. If you wanted to unify your thinking about the I Ching, you would get confused by believing that on the one hand it says that the West is evil and here is the place of the ancestors. The West in ancient occultism has to do with where the sun sets, and the setting of the sun is almost always symbolic of death, hence the ancestors, the inner life. The setting of the sun has been also symbolized by meditating, by going inside your being when the sun goes within, and withdrawing of consciousness, the sleep, etc. The Western Mountain has to do with that set of symbolisms. All right, and the lecture ends right there. All right, yeah, another fascinating journey into the wisdom of the I Ching. This is good stuff, folks. You know what I'm saying? You know, we gotta live by some type of wisdom. You know what I mean? You know, it's just, you know, like, other than that, like, what are we? Matrix minded out here. You know what I mean? I've been saying that a lot lately, matrix mind. But there's so many places to see what that is, to see that that's active. Like, you know, we don't think about, you know, the ancient wisdom. We don't think about the metaphors of life that are given to describe to us what this thing is. You know what I mean? That, you know, that this stuff is written down. It's like we act like we are, you know, like the light when we come here. A lot of us are very arrogant. We feel like we don't need no wisdom. How do you shun wisdom of ancient years? You know what I'm saying? You know, like people in, you know, like revered books like this, you know, speaking about the I Ching concepts like the tree of life, you know what I mean? You know, these are revered concepts. How do you just shun them? How do you not investigate them? I just break it down to like, well, you know, some people are older than other people. Some people are, you know, not concerned with this type of stuff. You know what I mean? Children are not concerned with, you know, this stuff that grown people are concerned with. You know what I mean? So that's how it breaks down. It's like, you know, this stuff is, you know, really real life. You know what I'm saying? And if you are matrix minded, then you're really not concerned with it. So I, you know, it's funny because the views tell you what people are really concerned about. You know what I mean? Most people ain't concerned about this stuff. That's why, you know, videos get like, you know what I mean, 17 views or something like that. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. Hey, it's a 17th hexagram. Somewhere there's significance there. But anyway, yeah, all right, I can ramble, as we know, but I will end it here. I would say peace and love, and we're going to do this again next time. All right, y'all. Peace.